Dr. Sarah Chun stood in the medical bay of the ship called the Hippocratic. She watched her team work on wounded soldiers from different planets. Some had blue skin. Others had scales. A few looked almost human, but with strange eyes that glowed in the dark. It did not matter what they looked like. It did not matter which side they fought for in this terrible war. The doctors and nurses from Earth treated them all the same way. They saved every life they could. Sarah had been doing this job for 12 years. She had seen 3 major wars between different alien races. Each time, the human medical ships came to help. They never picked sides. They never asked questions. They just healed whoever needed help. The year was 2387. Humans had joined the big family of alien races called the Galactic Federation 200 years ago. At first, the other races thought humans were weak. Humans did not have the strongest weapons. They did not have the biggest ships. But they had something else that made them special. Humans cared about all life, even the life of their enemies. The Universal Medical Neutrality Accords were like rules that everyone followed in space wars. These rules said that medical ships were safe. No one could attack doctors or nurses. No one could hurt the wounded who were being treated. It was the most important law in the galaxy. Sarah's ship had big red crosses painted on the sides. Special lights flashed a code that told everyone this was a medical ship. Even in the heat of battle, both sides left the medical ships alone. It had always been this way. The current war was called the Third Galactic Conflict. It started when the Vorthic Empire decided they wanted to control more planets. The Vorthic were a race that looked like giant lizards that walked on 2 legs. They had sharp teeth and claws. Their culture taught them that being strong in war was the most important thing in life. Most other races in the galaxy fought the Vorthic to stop them from taking over everything. The war had been going on for 2 years. Millions had died. But the human medical ships kept working. They saved Vorthic soldiers just as often as they saved their enemies. Sarah was treating a young Vorthic warrior who had been shot in the chest. The alien's breathing was rough and painful. His green blood was all over the medical table. But Sarah worked carefully to fix his wounds. Her hands moved with skill that came from years of practice. Dr. Chun called out Nurse Martinez from across the room. "We have another transport coming in. 20 wounded from the battle on the northern continent." Sarah nodded without looking up from her patient. The Vorthic warrior's eyes opened. He looked confused and scared. When he saw Sarah's human face, his eyes went wide with surprise. "Easy," Sarah said in a calm voice. She had learned to speak many alien languages. "You are safe. We are helping you." The Vorthic tried to speak, but his throat was damaged. Sarah gave him medicine for the pain. Soon his breathing became easier. She knew he would live. In a few weeks, he might be fighting against human allies again. But that did not matter to her. Her job was to save lives, not to think about politics. Far away from the medical ship, Supreme War Commander Dekmer sat in his command center. He was the leader of all Vorthic military forces. His huge body was covered in scars from many battles. His yellow eyes burned with anger as he looked at the battle reports. The Vorthic were losing this war. Every day, they controlled less territory. Every day, more of their soldiers died or got captured. Dekmer knew why they were losing. The enemy soldiers they killed in battle kept coming back. The human medical ships were saving enemy soldiers. These healed soldiers returned to fight again and again. Dekmer had watched his forces destroy an enemy unit completely. But 3 months later, half of those same soldiers were back in battle with new weapons and fresh energy. "This is not fair," Dekmer growled to his second-in-command. "The humans heal our enemies, but they also heal us. How can we win a war when the dead refuse to stay dead?" His assistant, a smaller Vorthic named Greigtar, nodded. The medical neutrality accords protect them, Supreme Commander. If we attack the medical ships, the entire galaxy will turn against us. Dagmar slammed his clawed fist on the table. The metal bent under the force of his anger. The galaxy already fights against us. What difference does it make? For weeks, Dagmar thought about this problem. He studied the human medical ships. They moved freely through space. They went wherever there were wounded soldiers. They had no weapons and very little protection. They trusted completely in the ancient laws that kept medical workers safe. Trust. Dagmar said the word like it tasted bad. The humans trust in rules and laws. But rules only work when everyone follows them. What happens when someone chooses to break the rules? Grigtar looked worried. Supreme Commander, you cannot mean to attack medical ships. It would be the greatest crime in galactic history. Dagmar turned his yellow eyes toward his assistant. History is written by those who win wars. If we destroy their medical ships, their soldiers will stay dead when we kill them. The war will end quickly. The galaxy will thank us for bringing peace. The Supreme War Commander began to plan his attack. He chose 3 human medical ships to target. The Hippocratic was one of them. These ships were saving the most enemy soldiers. If he could destroy them, it would change everything. Sarah Chun did not know about Dagmar's plans. She continued her work, moving between wounded soldiers of many different races. Each life she saved made the galaxy a little bit better. Each person she healed went back to their family. She believed in the work she did. The human medical teams had no idea that their greatest strength was about to become their greatest weakness. For 2 centuries, their willingness to help everyone had protected them. No one would dare hurt people who showed such kindness. But Dagmar was about to prove that some people would do anything to win. The attack would come soon. And when it did, the galaxy would learn something new about the humans. They would learn that the same species that could show infinite mercy could also deliver perfect justice. But that lesson was still days away. For now, Sarah Chun continued her work, saving lives and trusting in the goodness of the universe to protect her. The attack came without warning. Sarah Chun was checking on her patients when the ship shook violently. Red lights began flashing everywhere. The voice of Captain Williams came over the speakers. All medical staff, this is not a drill. We are under attack. Repeat, we are under attack. Sarah could not believe what she heard. No one attacked medical ships. It was the most basic rule of war. She ran to the window and looked outside. 3 large Vorthak warships surrounded the Hippocratic. Their weapons were already firing. But we are a medical ship. Sarah shouted, even though no one could hear her. We have wounded Vorthak soldiers on board. The ship shook again. This time, the lights went out for a moment. When they came back on, Sarah heard screaming from the wounded soldiers in their beds. Some of the medical equipment had fallen over and broken. Nurse Martinez grabbed Sarah's arm. Doctor, we need to get to the escape pods. Sarah shook her head. We cannot leave the patients. Help me move the wounded who cannot walk. But there was no time. The Vorthak weapons cut through the ship's walls like they were made of paper. Fire spread quickly through the medical sections. The air became hard to breathe. Sarah tried to carry a wounded soldier toward the escape pods, but another explosion threw her across the room. When she hit the wall, everything went dark. Hours later, Sarah woke up in an escape pod floating in space. Her head hurt badly and her arm was broken. Through the small window, she could see the burning pieces of the Hippocratic. 2 other human medical ships were also destroyed. They floated in space like broken toys. A rescue ship from the Federation found Sarah and a few other survivors. Out of 847 medical workers on the 3 ships, only 12 people lived. More than 1,200 wounded soldiers from many different races also died in the attack. News of the attack spread across the galaxy in hours. Every race, every government, every military leader heard about what the Vorthik had done. They had broken the most sacred law of warfare. They had attacked those who helped the wounded. The Federation Council called an emergency meeting. Representatives from 50 different worlds gathered to discuss what to do. Everyone expected Earth to demand action. They expected humans to call for punishment of the Vorthik Empire. But the humans said nothing. Ambassador Cathara of the Zilani Confederation tried to reach the human representative. The Zilani were a peaceful race that looked like tall, thin people with silver skin. Cathara had worked with humans for many years. She knew they always spoke up when something was wrong. Ambassador Chen, Cathara called the human representative who was named after the famous doctor. What does Earth want us to do about this attack? The human ambassador was a calm woman with gray hair. She looked tired and sad, but her voice was steady. Earth has no comment at this time. Cathara was confused. But surely you want justice. Your people died. Your medical ships were destroyed. This cannot stand. Earth has no comment, the human repeated. Then she stood up and walked out of the meeting. For exactly 24 hours, no human government said anything about the attack. No human leader appeared on the news. No human diplomat made any demands. The silence was complete and frightening. During those 24 hours, something else happened that the galaxy did not expect. Every human medical ship in space began to turn around. Every human doctor and nurse packed their things and left their posts. Every human medical station shut down. The withdrawal was so fast and complete that it seemed planned. But humans had never done anything like this before. For 200 years, they had provided medical help to anyone who needed it. Now, suddenly, they were all going home. Captain Vexcor of the Altarian Navy called his human medical officer, Dr. Thompson, to his office. The Altarians were a warrior race with blue skin and 4 arms. They had fought alongside humans for decades. Doctor, I just received orders that all human medical personnel must leave immediately. Surely this is some mistake. Dr. Thompson was packing his medical supplies in the boxes. His face showed no emotion. It is not a mistake, Captain. My orders are clear. All human medical operations are suspended. But what about our wounded? Captain Vexcor pointed to the medical bay where 30 injured Altarian soldiers were recovering. Some of them will die without human medical technology. Dr. Thompson stopped packing for a moment. His hand shook slightly, but his voice stayed calm. I suggest you contact other medical services. Earth is no longer providing medical support to galactic operations. For how long? The captain asked. No time limit was given, Dr. Thompson replied. Then he picked up his boxes and walked away. The same conversation happened on thousands of ships and stations across the galaxy. Human doctors left hospitals half-built. Human nurses walked away from patients in the middle of treatment. Human medical researchers abandoned their work on cures for alien diseases. Within 48 hours, every single human medical worker had left their post and returned to Earth space. They left behind medical equipment that other races could not operate. They took with them knowledge that no one else had. The effect was immediate and devastating. Field hospitals across dozens of worlds began to run out of supplies. Advanced medical procedures that only humans knew how to perform were suddenly impossible. Wounded soldiers started dying who could have been saved. The Federation realized, too, late how much they depended on human medical help. For 2 centuries, humans had quietly become the doctors for the entire galaxy. No one had noticed because the humans never asked for anything in return. They just helped because it was the right thing to do. Now that help was gone. Ambassador Cathara tried again to contact Earth. This time, she got through to Admiral Marcus Kane, a high-ranking human military officer. His face appeared on her screen, but his expression was cold and distant. "Admiral Kane," Cathara said, "the Federation needs to talk to Earth about returning medical support to the galaxy." "Medical operations are suspended," Kane replied. "Earth recommends that all governments revise their contingency plans accordingly." "Contingency plans?" "Admiral, people are dying without human medical help. Surely Earth does not want innocent beings to suffer." Kane's eyes grew hard. "Earth has always tried to prevent innocent beings from suffering. That is why we provided medical aid to all races, including our enemies. Yesterday, the Vorthic Empire proved that our medical workers are not safe. Until that changes, they will remain in Earth space. What would it take for medical operations to resume?" For a long moment, Kane said nothing. Then he spoke in a voice that was quiet, but somehow more frightening than if he had shouted. "The Vorthic Empire has declared that the rules of war do not apply to them. They have chosen to target those who heal the wounded. This choice will have consequences." "What kind of consequences?" Cathara asked. Kane's image disappeared from the screen. Cathara was left staring at empty space, wondering what the humans were planning. On Earth, Admiral Kane walked into a meeting room where other high-ranking military officers waited. On the table in front of them was a folder marked with words that few people in the galaxy had ever seen. "Execution of Course Classified." "Gentlemen," Kane said as he sat down, "the Vorthic have made their choice. Now we make ours." Colonel Alex Morrison had been a surgeon before he became a soldier. His hands had once saved hundreds of lives. Now those same hands were trained to take lives with the same precision he had used to save them. Morrison stood in a secret base hidden deep inside an asteroid near Earth. Around him, 50 other members of the Executioner Course prepared their equipment. Each person in this room had two things in common. They all used to work in medicine, and they all had lost someone to violence that could have been prevented. Morrison had lost his wife and daughter to pirates, who attacked a civilian transport ship. The pirates killed them even after they surrendered. That was when Morrison left his job as a doctor and joined a special program that few people knew existed. The Executioner Corps was humanity's most secret military unit. For 200 years, they had existed but never been used. Their purpose was simple and terrible. When someone committed crimes against innocent people, when they broke the most basic rules of civilization, the executioners were sent to make sure it never happened again. The Corps only recruited from people who understood the value of life. Former doctors, nurses, teachers, and rescue workers. People who had dedicated their lives to helping others. Only these people could be trusted with the power to decide who lived and who died. "Listen up," Morrison said to his team. "The Vorthic Empire has declared war on medical neutrality. They have chosen to target those who heal the wounded. Our response must be clear and permanent." The executioners wore black uniforms with a strange symbol. It looked like the medical cross, but with a sword cutting through it. Each member carried weapons that were designed not to cause pain, but to kill quickly and quietly. They also carried medical scanners that could identify the exact pressure points and nerve clusters of any alien species. Morrison looked at his team roster. Dr. Sarah Kim, former trauma surgeon, now expert in alien anatomy. Lieutenant Commander James Wright, former combat medic, now specialist in infiltration. Captain Maria Santos, former head nurse, now weapons expert. All of them had given up saving lives to become perfect instruments of justice. Our target list includes every Vorthic who participated in the attack on the medical ships, Morrison continued. From the Supreme War Commander down to the lowest soldier who fired a shot. We will find them all. The plan was as elegant as it was terrifying. The executioners would use ships that looked exactly like medical vessels. They would send the same neutrality codes that real medical ships sent. The Vorthic having broken the rules themselves, would either attack these ships or ignore them. Either response would give the executioners what they needed. 3 days after the attack on the medical ships, the first executioner vessel appeared in Vorthak space. It looked identical to the Hippocratic. It even used the same name. The ship broadcast medical neutrality codes and requested permission to treat wounded Vorthak soldiers. Commander Drakmal of the Vorthak Third Fleet received the message. He remembered the orders from Supreme War Commander Thekmur. Medical ships were no longer off-limits. They were targets. Destroy that ship, Drakmal ordered. Show the humans that their medical ships are not welcome here. But when the Vorthak weapons hit the ship, something unexpected happened. Instead of exploding, the ship's outer shell fell away like a costume being removed. Underneath was not a medical vessel, but something that looked like death itself. The black ship moved faster than anything the Vorthak had ever seen. Its weapons were not the huge guns of a warship. Instead, it fired thousands of small darts that seemed to know exactly where to hit each Vorthak ship for maximum damage. Within minutes, the entire Vorthak fleet was disabled. Their engines were destroyed. Their weapons were offline. Their communication systems were dead. But the ships themselves were not completely destroyed, and most of the crew was still alive. Then the executioners boarded the Vorthak ships. Morrison led the boarding team on to Commander Drakmal's flagship. The Vorthak warriors tried to fight them, but the executioners moved like surgeons performing an operation. Each movement was planned and precise. Each action had a purpose. Morrison found Drakmal hiding in his command center. The Vorthak commander was a huge creature with scars covering his body. He held a weapon in each of his 4 hands. "You are too late, human," Drakmal snarled. "I already killed your medical workers. I will kill you too." Morrison moved so quickly that Drakmal could not follow. In one smooth motion, he removed all 4 weapons from the Vorthak's hands and placed a small device against the alien's neck. "Commander Drakmal," Morrison said in a calm voice, "you participated in the attack on medical ships. You killed doctors and nurses who were helping wounded soldiers. You violated the most basic laws of war." Drakmal tried to struggle, but the device on his neck made his muscles stop working. "You cannot do this. There are rules. There are laws." Morrison nodded. "Yes, there were rules. You broke them. Now you face the consequences." The device Morrison had placed on Drakmal's neck was actually a medical injector. It delivered a drug that stopped the brain from sending signals to the heart. Death was instant and painless. Drakmal died the same way a patient might die peacefully during surgery. Morrison and his team worked through the entire Vorthak fleet. They checked the service records of every crew member using captured computer files. Anyone who had participated in the attack on medical ships received the same quick, painless death. Anyone who had not participated was left alive, but unable to operate their ships. When the executioners finished their work, they left behind a message broadcast on all Vorthak communication channels. The message was simple. The hands that heal can also exact judgment. This is your only warning. News of the attack spread quickly through the Vorthak Empire. An entire fleet had been disabled by a single ship. Half the crew was dead. The other half was stranded in space, waiting for rescue. But this was only the beginning. Over the next week, executioner teams struck 18 different Vorthak military installations. Each attack was surgical in its precision. They never killed civilians. They never destroyed more than necessary. But every Vorthak who had been involved in attacking medical ships died. The galaxy watched in amazement and terror. Humans, who had always been known for their compassion, were showing a completely different side of their nature. They could be just as precise in taking life as they were in saving it. Supreme War Commander Thekmur received reports of each attack in his command center. His yellow eyes burned with rage and something else he had never felt before. Fear. How are they doing this? It roared at his advisors. How can one ship defeat an entire fleet? His second-in-command, Grigtar, looked at the damage reports with shaking hands. Supreme Commander, these humans fight like nothing we have ever seen. They know exactly where to hit us. They know exactly who to target. It is like they can read our minds. Dekmer slammed his fist on the table again, but this time the gesture looked weak rather than strong. They are just humans. They are soft. They spend their time healing instead of fighting. Perhaps, Grigtar said quietly, that is what makes them so dangerous. They understand life so well that they also understand death. Morrison and his executioners continued their work. Each successful mission made them more confident. Each dead Vorthik brought them closer to their goal. They would not stop until every being who had participated in the attack on medical ships was dead. The Vorthik Empire was learning a lesson that would change the galaxy forever. The same species that showed infinite mercy to the wounded could show perfect justice to those who harmed the innocent, and the lesson was just beginning. Supreme War Commander Dekmer could not sleep. For 3 weeks, the human executioners had hunted his people across the galaxy. Every day brought new reports of dead Vorthik commanders. Every night, Dekmer wondered if he would live to see morning. He had moved his command ship to the center of the largest Vorthik fleet in space. 500 warships surrounded his flagship. Thousands of soldiers guarded every entrance. Advanced scanning equipment watched for any approaching vessels. Nothing could reach him here, but Dekmer had learned to fear the humans. They did not attack like normal enemies. They did not use big guns or massive ships. They came like a disease that killed only specific people. They moved like death wearing a friendly face. Report. Dekmer ordered his security chief, a scarred warrior named Vekaner. All scanning systems are active, Supreme Commander. No unknown ships within 50 light years. All personnel have been checked and double-checked. You are completely safe. Dekmer nodded, but he did not feel safe. The humans had done impossible things. They had infiltrated the most secure military bases in the Empire. They had killed commanders who were surrounded by elite guards. Each time, they left no witnesses alive who had actually seen them work. Perhaps we should contact the Federation, suggested Grigtar, Dekmer's second-in-command. Maybe we can negotiate with the humans. Offer them something in exchange for stopping these attacks. Dekmer's yellow eyes flashed with anger. We do not negotiate with prey. The Vorthik Empire bows to no one. But even as he said these words, Dekmer knew they sounded hollow. His empire was dying. Not from military defeat, but from surgical removal of its leadership. The humans were cutting away the most aggressive Vorthik commanders, like a doctor removing diseased tissue. That night, Dekmer went to sleep in his heavily guarded quarters. Elite soldiers stood watch outside his door. Automated weapons scanned constantly for intruders. Force fields protected every entrance. He woke to find a human sitting in a chair beside his bed. The man was not large or particularly frightening to look at. He wore a simple black uniform with the symbol of a medical cross pierced by a sword. His hands looked like the hands of someone who performed delicate work. But his eyes held something that made Dekmer's blood turn cold. Supreme War Commander Dekmer, the human said in perfect Vorthik language. My name is Colonel Alex Morrison. We need to talk. Dekmer reached for the alarm button beside his bed, but his arm would not move. He tried to call for his guards, but his voice made no sound. The human had done something to him, but Dekmer could not tell what. Do not worry, Morrison said. You are not seriously injured. I have temporarily blocked the nerve signals that control your voluntary muscles. You can still breathe and think, but you cannot move or speak. It is a medical technique that we use during certain types of surgery. Morrison stood up and walked around the room. He examined Dekmar's weapons collection with the calm interest of a tourist visiting a museum. You have some impressive pieces here. This sword is particularly well made. I imagine it has killed many beings over the years. The human picked up the sword and tested its weight. Do you know what the difference is between a warrior and a doctor, Supreme War Commander? A warrior learns 1,000 ways to destroy. A doctor learns 1,000 ways to preserve. But when a doctor decides to destroy something, he knows exactly which way will be most effective. Morrison sat back down in the chair. 3 weeks ago, your forces attacked medical ships. You killed 847 doctors and nurses who were helping wounded soldiers. You also killed 1,200 patients who were receiving medical care. Do you remember giving this order? Dekmar could not answer, but his eyes showed that he remembered. Good, Morrison continued. I wanted to be sure we were talking about the same event. You see, the attack on our medical ships was not just a military action. It was a declaration that the Vorthic Empire no longer believed in the basic rules that separate civilization from chaos. Morrison pulled out a small device that looked like a medical scanner. He pointed it at Dekmar and studied the readings. Fascinating. Your species has some unique biological characteristics. For example, you have an extra gland that produces hormones related to aggression and dominance. Your scientists call it the warrior gland, do they not? Dekmar's eyes widened. How did this human know about Vorthic biology? Humans are very good at biology, Morrison said, as if he could read Dekmar's thoughts. We have studied every species in the galaxy. We know how your bodies work, how your minds function, how your societies develop. We needed this knowledge to provide medical care to everyone. Morrison stood up again and walked to the window. Outside, Dekmar could see his massive fleet of warships. Your species has cultivated aggression for thousands of years. You bred for it. You celebrated it. You made violence the center of your culture. The warrior gland is the biological source of this aggression. Remove it, and Vorthic become much more peaceful. The human turned back to face Dekmar. For the past 3 weeks, my teams have not just been killing the Vorthic who attacked our medical ships. We've been performing evolutionary surgery on your entire species. Morrison pulled out another device. This one looked like a weapon, but it was designed to inject rather than destroy. Every Vorthic we have killed carried a specific genetic marker. They all had an overactive warrior gland that made them extremely aggressive. By removing these individuals from your population, we have essentially performed selective breeding on your species. Dekmar understood now, and the realization filled him with horror. The humans were not just punishing the Vorthic Empire for its crimes. They were changing the fundamental nature of the Vorthic people. In 50 years, Morrison continued, the Vorthic Empire will still exist. But it will be populated by individuals who are biologically incapable of the extreme aggression that led to the attack on our medical ships. Your children and grandchildren will be more peaceful than you can imagine. Morrison sat down one more time and looked directly into Dekmar's eyes. You wanted to win a war by breaking the rules of civilization. Instead, you have lost something much more important. You have lost the very nature of your people. Your species will survive, but your culture of violence will die with you. The human raised the injection device. This is not revenge, Supreme War Commander. This is medicine. Sometimes, to save the patient, a doctor must remove the diseased tissue. Your species was sick with violence. We are curing you. Morrison pressed the injector against Dekmar's neck. The injection is painless. It will stop your heart in exactly 30 seconds. But before you die, I want you to understand something. We did not do this because we are cruel. We did this because we are healers. We heal by preserving life. But sometimes, to preserve the lives of many, we must end the lives of a few. As the drug took effect, Dekmer felt his strength leaving him. But Morrison kept talking. Every Vorthik who dies today carries the genetic markers for extreme aggression. Every Vorthik who lives carries the genes for a more peaceful future. In one generation, your species will be transformed. Morrison stood up as Dekmer's breathing became shallow. Your descendants will thank us. They will live in a galaxy where medical ships are safe, where the wounded are protected, where the rules of civilization mean something. Dekmer's eyes closed for the last time. Morrison checked his pulse to confirm death, then activated a small communicator. All teams, this is Morrison. Primary target is confirmed. Mission complete. Across the galaxy, the last few executioner teams finished their work. The genetic cleansing of the Vorthik Empire was complete. Every individual with the biological capacity for the kind of violence that led to attacks on medical ships was dead. The humans had not just won a war. They had performed evolutionary surgery on an entire species, and they had done it with the same careful precision they used to save lives. 6 months after the death of Supreme War Commander Dekmer, Dr. Sarah Chen returned to space aboard a new medical ship. The vessel was called the Hippocratic in honor of the ship she had lost. But this new ship was different from the old one in important ways. Sarah stood on the bridge and looked at the symbols painted on the hull. The Red Cross was still there, marking this as a medical vessel. But beside, it was a new symbol that had never been seen on human ships before. A sword cutting through a medical cross. The symbol of the Executioner Corps. Dr. Chun, said Captain Rodriguez, the ship's commanding officer. We are approaching the Kepler system. There are wounded from a mining accident who need medical attention. Sarah nodded. How many wounded? 37. Mostly Vorthik miners. Their new government has requested human medical assistance. Sarah smiled sadly. The new Vorthak government was very different from the old empire. After the death of all their most aggressive leaders, the remaining Vorthik had chosen peace over war. They had disbanded their military and focused on building instead of destroying. Many other species could hardly believe the change. The medical team prepared to receive the wounded miners. Sarah watched her staff work with the same skill and dedication that human medical workers had always shown. The attack on the old Hippocratic had not changed their commitment to saving lives, but everything else had changed. Captain Rodriguez was not just a ship captain. He was also a trained member of the Executioner Corps. Every person on the medical ship could switch from healer to killer in seconds if needed. The medical supplies included both life-saving medicines and precise poisons. The ship's systems could appear as a medical vessel or transform into an instrument of justice. Incoming transmission, announced the communications officer. It is from Ambassador Cathara of the Zolani Confederation. Sarah had known Cathara for many years. The silver-skinned diplomat had been one of the few voices calling for justice after the attack on the medical ships. Now she served as a liaison between Earth and the rest of the galaxy. Cathara's face appeared on the main screen. She looked older than Sarah remembered, with new lines of worry around her eyes. Dr. Chun, it is good to see you back in service. How are you feeling? I am ready to return to work, Sarah replied. The wounded need medical care, regardless of what happened in the past. Cathara nodded, but her expression remained troubled. Doctor, I need to ask you about something. The Federation Council has been discussing what happened to the Vorthak Empire. The change in their behavior is remarkable, but also somewhat frightening. Sarah had expected this conversation. The other species in the galaxy were slowly understanding what the humans had done. They realized that the Executioner Corps had not just killed individual Vorthak. They had changed the fundamental nature of an entire species. What specifically concerns the Federation Council? Sarah asked. The biological changes, Cathara said carefully. Our scientists have studied the surviving Vorthic population. They have all lost the genetic traits that made them extremely aggressive. Some council members are wondering if humanity might use similar techniques on other species. Sarah looked out at the stars while she considered her answer. The question was fair. Humanity had proven they could reshape an entire race through selective elimination. Other species wanted to know if they were safe from similar treatment. The execution of cores exists for one purpose, Sarah finally said. To protect those who cannot protect themselves. Medical workers, wounded soldiers, civilians. If any species targets these groups, they will face the same consequences that the Vorthic faced. Cathara nodded slowly. And if a species has other problems, violence in their society, perhaps, or aggressive tendencies that harm their neighbors. Sarah turned back to face the screen. Humanity does not impose its will on others. We respond only when the most basic rules of civilization are broken. The Vorthic chose to attack medical ships. That choice led to consequences. But surely you see how this appears to other species, Cathara pressed. Humanity has the power to change the biological nature of any race. You could eliminate aggression, enhance intelligence, modify behavior. Some fear that you might decide to improve the galaxy, whether we want it or not. The conversation was interrupted by the arrival of the Vorthic transport ship carrying the wounded miners. Sarah watched it approach and saw something that would have been impossible 6 months ago. The Vorthic ship's weapons were completely disabled. Not damaged, but intentionally removed. The new Vorthic government had chosen to make their vessels incapable of combat. Ambassador Cathara, Sarah said. Look at that Vorthic ship. Do you see weapons on it? Cathara studied the approaching vessel. No, I do not. 6 months ago, every Vorthic ship was armed for battle. Now they build ships that cannot fight. Did humans force them to make this choice? Cathara shook her head. No, they chose this themselves. Exactly, Sarah said. We did not change Vorthic society by force. We removed the individuals who were biologically incapable of peaceful cooperation. The remaining Vorthic made their own choices about how to rebuild their civilization. The wounded Vorthic miners were brought aboard the Hippocratic. Sarah went to the medical bay to examine them. The aliens were smaller than the old Vorthic warriors had been. Their scales were brighter in color, and their eyes showed more intelligence and less rage. One of the miners, a young Vorthic named Kethver, spoke to Sarah while she treated his injuries. Doctor, I want to thank you for coming to help us. I know that humans have no reason to trust my species after what we did. Sarah looked up from her work. What your species did is in the past. You personally have done nothing wrong. My job is to help anyone who needs medical care. Kethver nodded, but his expression remained troubled. Many of my people feel guilty about the attack on your medical ships. We know that our ancestors were violent and cruel, but we also know that we are different from them. We do not feel the same anger or desire for conquest. Sarah finished bandaging Kethver's injured arm. That is good. The galaxy is a better place when species choose cooperation over conflict. Is it true, Kethver asked quietly, that humans made us this way? That you changed us genetically? Sarah paused in her work. This was the question she had been expecting. The new generation of Vorthic were beginning to understand what had happened to their species. They knew they were different from their ancestors, but they were not sure why. Your ancestors made choices that led to consequences, Sarah said carefully. Those individuals who chose violence over peace did not survive to pass on their genes. The Vorthic who did survive were those with more peaceful tendencies. Your generation is the result of natural selection, guided by the consequences of your ancestors' actions. Kefir considered this answer. So humans did not change us directly. You simply removed those who could not change themselves. That is correct, Sarah said. Evolution continued to work, as it always has. But the selection pressures changed when your species chose to break the most basic rules of civilization. As Sarah worked on other wounded miners, she thought about the conversation with Ambassador Cathara. The galaxy was learning to live with a new reality. Humanity had proven that they could enforce the rules of civilization, not just through military force, but through biological intervention. The message was clear to every species: attack medical workers, target civilians, or break the fundamental laws that protected innocent life, and face evolutionary consequences, not over the next few hours. Sarah successfully treated all 37 wounded miners. Each one thanked her personally before returning to their transport ship. Their gratitude was genuine and touching. These new Vorthik were capable of emotions that their ancestors had rarely shown. As the Vorthik ship prepared to leave, Captain Rodriguez approached Sarah in the medical bay. "Doctor, we have new orders from Earth Command. There are reports of raiders attacking civilian transports in the Sigma Draconis system. Some of the raiders appear to be targeting medical supply ships." Sarah looked up from cleaning her equipment. Her hands, which had just finished healing, clenched into fists. "Pirates targeting medical supplies?" "Yes, Doctor. Earth Command has authorized deployment of Executioner Corps assets to the area." Sarah nodded. The work continued. As long as there were those who would prey on the innocent, humanity would respond with the same surgical precision they used to save lives. "Prepare the ship for departure," Sarah ordered, "and send a message to the raiders in the Sigma Draconis system." "What should the message say, Doctor?" Sarah looked out at the stars, thinking of all the lives that depended on medical supplies reaching their destinations safely. "Tell them that the healers are coming, and if they choose to interfere with medical operations, the executioners will follow." The galaxy had learned a new truth about humanity. The same species that could show infinite compassion could also deliver perfect justice. The same hands that could heal any wound could also ensure that those who broke faith with civilization would not survive to repeat their mistakes. Peace was not just the absence of war. It was the presence of consequences for those who would destroy it, and humanity would enforce those consequences with the same dedication they showed to saving lives. The message was spreading across the galaxy in a dozen languages.